camera, so people who want to see this later can look on the Gail Kimball YouTube channel. It's called, it's about global youth. So, for both of you, how long have you been married, Richard?
24 years.
And you have 4 children.
4 kids.
Correct.
And one just got married.
And one just got married. I think their 2nd anniversary is coming up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. And then George and Zoe, you've been married how long?
We've been married 28 years.
And we have 3 children by 3 previous marriages.
How does that work? Who's who?
Zoe has 2 children by 2 previous marriages, and I have 1 child by a previous marriage, and we now have 3 grandchildren as well, ages 11 weeks, 8 years, and 13 years.
Well, 11 weeks, 14 years, and 12 years. But that's okay.
In the ballpark.
Yeah, that's close enough.
So, do you believe in love at first sight, George and Zoe? What did you think when you met each other? Did you go, wow? Or did you go, eh? Or any thoughts when you first met?
Why don't you go first, George?
Okay. Actually, I met Zoe at a time in my life when I spent a lot of time getting sensitized to my inner world. And the thing that struck me when I first met Zoe was this thought that arose in my mind. The first thought that came up was, this is a person worth getting to know. I made note of that, and here we are.
30 years later.
As a friend, or more than as a friend when you first met?
He's a guy.
And I mean, George, do you want to comment on that?
I guess I didn't know, but worth getting to know. That was a biggie, as opposed to, I don't want to ever see this person again,
Yeah,
or
boring.
some middle ground. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was a path at first sight.
Zoe.
I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, no. And I know what that's like, but this fortunately wasn't for me. But it was, well, my first thought was fairly neutral, I'd say. To be honest, that's not true. Okay, fine. My first thought was, I really hope this person doesn't come over to talk to me.
The opposite.
Were you at a party or something?
No, it was at work, and he and his brother walked in, and as soon as I saw them standing, waiting to be helped, I just thought, oh God, please, dear, not my desk. And that was 30 years ago.
We were hairy and unkempt.
Yeah.
Oh.
A little hairier and a little more unkempt than I was interested in it.
Okay. Aaron and Richard, how did you meet? What did you think?
Through mutual friends. And I think it was interest.
Yeah.
At
I would say
first sight.
interest at first sight. I think that's the best way.
Yeah.
You brought that word up, and
Yeah.
it's probably the best way, and it's probably the
Worth
best thing you can
checking
hope.
out.
That's
Yeah.
all you can hope for, really.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That I've been working on these books about global youth activism and what's on the mind of global youth. And around the world, a lot of people told me, oh, marriage based on lust, romance doesn't work. You need to have arranged marriages where the families enter in and you look at their horoscopes, you make sure they're compatible, you interview people, and that the Western system of romance propelling it means we have like half the people in a divorce. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think if you're kind of raised in that culture of arranged marriage, I mean, that's sort of what you know and understand. I don't think Westerners are really raised with that. Although I think that there has to be some, you have to be a little bit pragmatic, although that can be kind of hard and like those first flutters of love. But yeah, I think purely, I think we were talking about this last night, purely basing it off of romance or just sexual attraction, that's,
It'll be
you need
short-lived.
a little bit
It's-
more,
It's a
yeah.
short burst, and it's
it's better if those things grow over time.
Helen Fisher's done research about the brain chemistry of romantic love and sexual attraction, and that intense where you can't sleep and you can't digest your food, that it has to do with brain hormones.
Well, it's hormones.
And
Yeah.
but those drop off, and then the endorphins kick in that are more steady state, and yeah.
One thought here is, we're talking about how the ice is broken at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's always scary to approach someone who you don't know
For
and
men
approach them. And
especially.
so what was interesting about our first encounter, when I finally did get up the courage to ask Zoe out for the first time, her response was very interesting. It was very atypical and made it very interesting. She didn't say yes, which would have meant she was too easy. She didn't say no, which would have put her in the ranks of all the other women on the planet who were unavailable. She said maybe. And my first thought, having been through a marriage and other relationships, was perfect. This is a woman of discretion.
So
Yeah.
what happened that you decided, okay, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person?
What happened? What happened for me was that I found him to be a really great friend. I found him interesting. I found him very compatible, spiritually compatible, which is important for me. Physically compatible, which is also important. I loved the way that he interacted with children, my own, his, others. That was a total turn on. They say the turn on really is in the brain, and it certainly
Yes.
is for me.
Yes.
And even back then, it really was. Yeah, I think that's what it was. And I really did, after we started dating, I really did fall in love with him. Even though it wasn't love at first sight, it certainly grew. And an affinity for him, which I still have today, based on a genuine appreciation of somebody's being. But I kind of knew, I wouldn't have agreed to even go out with George had I not known that he was leaving the country, possibly indefinitely.
Boy, that's incentive.
And so he did. He left, and then he came back.
How much later?
About 4 or 5 months later. And but I didn't know he was coming back. He didn't know he was coming back. And so at that point, when he did come back, I realized that this was somebody I wanted in my life indefinitely. Yeah.
And what did you learn from having been married before? Were those like mistakes, or were they just like necessary parts of your growth, or what?
Well, I've learned. What did I learn? I don't. My answer yesterday is different than today. My answer today is, I probably had no business getting married, really, before, in terms of making a long-term commitment, because certainly with the first marriage, I kind of figured, because of my background, because of how I grew up, I figured, well, you get married, and if you don't like it, you get divorced. It was kind of like, well, and this one, we're definitely going to get divorced. I knew it before I even got married.
Wow.
So that wasn't really a
So
mature...
why did you get married?
I was pregnant.
Oh, good
And
reason.
my husband, my ex-husband, who's a friend to this day, really insisted on getting married. And so my second husband, God, may he rest in peace, and I didn't kill him. He just happened to die way after we got divorced. It was love at first sight. It was like total love at first sight. It was total chemistry. But we never were very good friends. And so what I learned is friendship comes first.
I did interviews with hundreds of couples for books called 50-50 Marriage and 50-50 Parenting, and that's what they said, number one, is you marry your best friend.
And at the time, Gail, I was an astrologer back then, and when I remember when I first met my second husband, I got his birth data, of course, right away, went home, read the charts, and everything there said, don't do it, don't do it. And I clearly remember thinking, love conquers all. Love will conquer this, too. And apparently not. I gave it my best shot.
That's a good lesson for people who are listening, who are young and unmarried. It seems to be a truism, but we have to say it again. Don't think you can change someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or yourself, even. If you are a certain way, we have to learn how to accept who we are, not who we're going to be one day.
Right.
Maybe we'll hopefully change some of those things, but the reality is who we are today.
Like if you're an introvert, you're probably always going to be an
Yeah, you may
introvert.
change later, but you can't bank on the later now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So George, what did you learn from having been married before?
After my first marriage, I learned that I never wanted to be married again. And when Zoe and I first got together, one of our places of safety was in knowing that there was no way we would ever get married again. That was a safe space, and it took us a long time to grow into a place to where we were willing to try the marriage vehicle again. First marriage, I think the same principles for me played out as in the second marriage. I'm very home-based, and I am very much interested in close partnership. I happened to not do a very good job picking my first partner, or circumstances didn't work out. It was a rather tragic set of events. So I got a redo with Zoe, and so I'm grateful.
So, Aaron and Richard, why do you think, as people who are in your first and only marriage, why did you not make those same kind of errors of youth of thinking you could change the person or chemistry or?
Well, I think before I met Richard, I sort of was on a bit of a fast track as a teenager. So I made a lot of like mistakes kind of already, not ones that were as impactful as getting married, but still like trusting the wrong people or not listening to my inner voice, not kind of giving in to like low self-esteem things. So I think I was a little bitter by the time. Actually, I think probably the line that made you like start to fall in love with me was, "I need you like I need a hole in my head." But
which is interesting.
There's a
Listening,
parallel.
yeah, listening to your stories was that because I was in the same boat. I was like, I had relationships and I wasn't looking for anything serious. I didn't want anything serious. In fact, all my previous girlfriends were very quick to say "I love you." And I kept waiting and waiting for Aaron to say that. And we're like into month 5 or 6, and it hasn't been said. And I was actually the one I'm finally like, oh, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it first. But I think it was that, we were talking about our relationship, and she goes, honestly, right now I need a boyfriend like I need a hole in the head. And it was kind of, as George said, it was that safe space for me. It's like, okay, well, now there's no pressure. There's no pressure on me to do this or do that. We can just hang out, and we can become friends. And so that's interesting.
Yeah.
It all kind of comes around.
So what kind of advice did you give your daughter? Because she was married 2 years ago. What did you give to those
well,
young
number
people?
one, our daughter and her husband, fiance at the time, are like very pulled together
They're
young
amazing.
people.
They're
They're
amazing
really,
young people, yeah.
they're early 20s going on like 70. So I think probably the big thing, taking my mother-in-law's advice, is, you at the end of the day, you want your spouse to stay, your kids to go, and you can't take words back. Like, you have to be careful sometimes what you say. If you just lash out, you can apologize for saying it, but you really have to think about, is it really worth, if you feel like lashing out, is it really worth saying those words? And I think that was probably, the first one is kind of a joke, but that being careful what you say, especially when you're upset or angry.
Do you think it's okay to say, I need a break, I need to walk around the street for a minute and cool down?
I get a cool head, but like sometimes, you lash out at the people that you love,
Because
or
it's safe.
yeah, but sometimes you can't take those words back. So I think that was probably my biggest advice.
I think that, like you said, it's kind of joking, but you want your kids to leave, your spouse to stay.
if they're a good spouse to keep around, that
I don't remember who said this. I'm sure you probably do, but the best thing a couple can do for their kids is to love each other, and I think that's so important. I mean, for the kids, like our kids see us on the couch, arm in arm. They see us going out to dinner, coming home late, doing things together and stuff. And, it's not that we neglect our kids. We spend as much time as we can with them, but we go out and we enjoy each other, and they get to see that. And I think that that's something that, for a marriage, for a couple starting out, that's something I would say is, before you have kids, enjoy each other, have fun, go out and everything. When you have kids, when they're very young, it's more difficult. So you're going to have some at-home time. But as the kids get older, you trust babysitters, you trust grandparents to watch the kid. Get out and keep being
Yeah.
the two of you. Don't just put that on a shelf and say, oh, when the kids are out of the house, we'll do it again. You have to keep it going.
Yeah, I do life coaching with people, and the main problem I see with marriages that are swamped is they had kids and they forgot about the couple, the romance,
Yeah.
which is hard when you're being
Yeah.
woken up all the time and you're tired and you're stressed and it's. But what I always tell them is you have to have date night once a week. You have to go out and leave the house. So it's adult time to build. And Masters of Johnson said pair bonding is based on the shared memory of good times. So I think that's crucial. What do you do, Zoe and George, to have that kind of romance time to keep it fresh?
Well, number one, our kids have been gone a long time. The last one left 17 years ago. So we've had a lot of our time at different periods, but not always, because we both work a lot. And it's easy to let other things get in the way, but what we do is every Friday, pretty much, it's date night. Every Friday is date night.
Brilliant.
And we try to spend some of the weekend together, and we take trips together. We do things together, and we really do make an effort. But every Friday night is, we usually end up going swimming or to the gym, or it's nothing all that romantic, but to us it is.
But it's time spent
But
together.
it's time
Yeah,
spent together.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a shared,
and we
shared
watch
experience.
movies, and we hang out together, and we visit, and we like that. Yeah.
I remember when we did have the children in the house, one thing Zoe's mother shared with us, one of our children was not doing so well and taking a lot of our attention, being very, very distracting. Our relationship was not going along so well because we didn't necessarily see eye to eye about how to negotiate the situation.
Blended families.
Yeah.
Right,
hardest.
blended family.
Yeah, I
it's very
can't.
difficult. But Zoe's mom said something that I thought was very wise. She said to us, she says, pay attention. You want to be with your spouse for the rest of your life, not your child.
Yeah.
So you both got that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
You all
place
got
your
it.
emphasis where it needs to be, which is on your relationship first. The children will have their own lives, but do not structure your marriage around a child.
Yeah.
And I remember when my mother said that to me, I was really struck that she said that, and I was angry because I really wanted her to just take my side. But she was right.
Oh, yes.
She was right.
Yes. Let's thank our underwriters. This show is made possible by the generous contributions of KCFR supporters and by East Out West Gallery. That's interesting. East Out West Gallery at 228 Main Street in downtown Chico. Opening on September 30th, East Out West Gallery features fine jewelry, original paintings, and wearable art. Does that mean fabric with painting on it? The opening after party is at Lost at Main with Smokey the Groove, and from the Disco Biscuits, Dr. Famious. Details at East Out West on Facebook. And Ask Dr. Gale is also brought to you by Mona Noodle, as in take a bow, bow, serving Japanese and Hawaiian influenced food, including Japanese style ramen, bao, and Hawaiian style poke. Momona now offers build your own noodles and rice bowls with all the same great Momona flavors made in-house and sources locally when possible at 230 West 3rd Street in downtown Chico. Open for dinner with beer, sake, and wine. Visit momonachico.com for details. Also, I'd like to mention that Taste of Chico is on October 1st. There's all kinds of body workers. It's a benefit for the station, and it's going to be at the Nature Center. And there'll be speakers as well as body work. So I wasn't clear if Aaron, Richard, you do a structured kind of a date night, or how do you make sure you have fun time together?
I think we try and just, if it works out to go out to dinner, we do that. A lot of times on the weekends, we'll like, if it's a lazy morning, we'll have long conversations on the couch over coffee, and, you know, in the evenings we hang out together.
Yeah.
That's another thing my 50-50 marriage and parenting people said, is that they like to talk to each other.
Mhm.
And it's easy
Yeah.
to talk. I'm sure we've all been with people that you can't think of what to say. So I think that's a big deal. Speaking of communication, there's inevitable conflicts. So what would you say has been the most difficult source of conflict for you two, Aaron and Richard, and how did you work it through?
Gosh, I don't know.
She
It's-
looks at me. We went through actually a pretty serious conflict about 2.5, 3 years ago. And it looked like things might be on the ropes a little bit, you know, between us, and hopefully we hid it well from those around us. But it didn't make sense, and it was something going on, and it just didn't add up. I went and I spoke with a psychologist, and I don't want to name names, but I wish I could. But anyway, in a very brief synopsis, she says, well, and this may be rare for someone, but she goes, do you want to hear what's going on? And I said, yeah, I'm curious. Like, I know it's not right. Something's wrong. She says, you have abandonment issues. And so I'm like, what? You know, no, my parents are great, you know, everything. But anyway, we worked through that, and then it became very apparent
That's
that
something
was
that
what was
triggered
going
you.
on. And when I
It's-
realized, like when she told me that, I'm like going through everything, and I'm like, okay, it's all making sense. This is making sense. So other than that, I mean, we had just your little minor issues, a few things here and there, but that was really when things kind of came to a head. And I'm just glad that I went and sought out help.
We
Oh,
realized
yeah.
that we had developed like sort of bad relationship communication hygiene, and it was starting to accelerate.
You're kind of taking each other for granted.
Yeah, or just got into some bad
Almost
habits.
like siblings that are just not.
Oh,
Yeah.
bickering?
Yeah, bickering siblings. It
Oh.
kind
And
of,
so
but that wasn't us. And it was
for
just
him,
weird.
for him making changes, that kind of forced me to change. You know, I had to change like how I communicate, and, you know, take risks on communicating. And yeah, you know, I think that was like a big kind of a marriage conflict. As far as like dealing with like everyday conflicts, I think we usually, you know, try and work those, you know, kids,
Yeah, kids,
finances.
money, all that stuff was not a big deal. This was the one thing that just kind of shook us both.
That's amazing, because 4 kids is a stress, and just all those sleepless nights and being tortured with being woken up and not having your freedom. So how did you get through those 4 baby years without feeling resentful of each other?
Well, I don't know. Maybe because we had them spaced out a certain way that, like, you know, the older ones could start maybe being a little more self-sufficient. I don't know.
But I think
It
we
was a
also
blur.
we worked together as a team. You know, at that time when the kids were really young, my job, I was gone a lot. I was doing a lot, and I remember Erin telling somebody, being married to Richard is like having a boyfriend that really loves my kids. So a lot of it when they were little was on
Ouch.
her. But
Ouch.
yeah, but when I was home, I was home. I didn't come home and I didn't go open
To
up
the
a bottle
couch.
of booze and sit on it. You know, I came home and I was home, and I wanted to be with my kids, and I wanted to be with my wife. And so, you know, I tried to share as much as I can. And luckily things changed for my job and it got easier. But I think we just kind of, we knew each other was doing the best they could and as much as they could.
So for people who are young and unmarried, I'm kind of listing in my mind the lessons that we've said so far. So one is, don't rush into something and be a little hard to get. If things get difficult, see a counselor. Put the marriage over everything else in terms of making sure your batteries as a couple are charged. Listen to your mother. What about George and Zoe? I would say probably kids have been the hardest for you. Is that right?
Yeah, I think having 3 children by 3 separate marriages, when Zoe and I came together, we represented a family system, but previously Zoe had 2 other exes, so that's 2 other family systems, and I had an ex, so that's 1. So at any given time, we would have 4 family systems living under one roof.
Wow.
And at any given time, and it was always a changing cast of characters. Every year we would have different combinations of children in the house because we were negotiating with 3 ex-spouses across the country. So what we found is that inevitably during the course of the year, one or the other of the children would light up with some issue, or we would light up with an issue around a child. And what we learned very swiftly over the years is no matter where we moved, one of the first things we would do when we moved to a new community would be to find a good counselor who was there in our back pocket for when we needed it.
Right.
Yeah, always. And I want to add to that. I think we also struggled with cultural issues. I come from a different culture, or rather he comes, I'm not sure who comes, but we come from different cultures.
Yeah.
And that also had a much stronger role than I ever imagined. I figured love conquers all, right? Wrong. And I think, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what you were talking earlier in regards to arranged marriages and so forth. There is some wisdom in that, not that anyone could have ever told me whom to marry or what to do
for sure.
or anything else. But, certainly coming from a similar culture diffuses a lot of issues immediately, whether they're religious, family issues. I mean, yeah, we come from very different dynamics of how family's structured, and that played a big role. So we started when we got together. My son was 11. He's 40 plus now, 41 almost, and the 2 girls were 5 and a half, something like that. And within a year or 2, we had a therapist always to go to, and wherever we've lived, I would interview people because inevitably we would have issues come up. But I think that I think kids would have been probably something that has been like what has pointed to our own issues, how we deal with the children, because that's just a symptom of how we're dealing with other things, but also culture, which is another, it's symptomatic of. But fortunately, we've always liked each other's spirit, and we're willing to do it. I mean, we've had a couple of times in our time together where it's been, heck, we've tried getting divorced. We tried really hard. We spent a lot of money on it. And only to find out we really liked each other. But it took work. It took a lot of effort. But we really wanted to give it our best shot, regardless of the outcome. And the outcome was that we are better than ever.
Great. So what did you learn from the therapist about dealing with kids? Like, I suppose the problem is, from what the step-parents that I've talked with, is the stepfather comes in and thinks he wants to shape things up and get discipline and bring order and keep things, do his fatherly job, and the kids are like, "You're not my father, don't tell me what to do," and then the mom kind of gets caught in the middle.
Yeah, there's a lot of triangulation that goes on, unfortunately, and it's sometimes, sometimes it's about those issues, sometimes it's different parenting styles, sometimes it's money issues that come up, and you're paying what's-her-face how much? It's like, and you're letting what's-his-face do what? So there's a lot of triangulation, which is never healthy in any relationship.
So, George, what did you learn about how to deal with that when, like, one of the kid that's not yours is going off the wall?
Well, I think a lot of the issues revolved around limits and boundaries and our approach to setting limits and boundaries and how to resolve situations, some of which are cultural approaches, some of which are familial. And I think the thing that I learned most, the thing that we wrestled with really at its essence, was this idea that in a relationship you have to have a certain amount of rubber band, some ability to flex with situations. And as situations got more and more tense and more ramped up, the rubber band would go away. And all of a sudden you'd find yourself in a place where there was no more room to flex on either side. And while we could communicate, it was usually to a wall. And so we had to bring the flexibility, the flex back to the relationship.
How do you do that?
To create the space. Well, through working with a good counselor to understand our personal issues that drive the motivations here.
And to be on as much as possible on the same page, not to argue in front of the kids, not to, to at least come off as united, even when perhaps we didn't always feel
Right.
united.
Yeah, I think that's
But
a
to
big
come
one,
off
yeah.
as united and to try to the best of our ability to really just kind of make compromises where we could. So we could be on the same page and prioritize what's most important, because there had to be give and take, yeah.
A book that I recommend to people is Harville Hendrix, How to Get the Love You Want.
Mhm.
And he says we tend to pick the familiar. In other words, we repeat the patterns that we grew up with, which can be great if you had model parents and relationship with your parents, but most of us probably don't have that. So, Aaron and Richard, did you find that we all have the ghosts from our
blend.
family of origin. Did you find yourself working through those patterns from your childhood? I mean, we all do. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that we just each as individuals are very different from our parents. Just, each of us as an individual are different from our parents. But yeah, exactly. You can't avoid, having an effect from your family of origin.
So sometimes we pick someone who's like our parent of the opposite sex or the other, whatever your sexual orientation is, or sometimes we do the opposite, but it's still kind of in reaction. But it doesn't sound like that's played out so much with you
Yeah,
two.
no, I don't think so. I mean, I love my mother. Don't really have anything negative to say, but I don't think Erin is much like my mother. I think she's a completely different individual.
Well, is she the opposite? Because then that's kind of the playing into this.
Yeah,
I think there's probably similarities
there could
and
be similarities.
differences.
Yeah, but I think more differences than similarities.
So do you think people that opposites attract, or I guess what I'm hearing is we need to have some similarities in our values and our understandings, and maybe some differences to keep it interesting. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think like sometimes those really core issues, those are better to be aligned, or if you're kind of on the same page. But yeah, I mean, you have to have some personality differences. If you were just the male copy of me, how boring would that be?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have some differences, so that the sum of the two of you together is more powerful than just you as individuals. So.
What would you say those core values, core issues are, at least for you two? That are like, I want somebody who believes
Yeah,
this.
I think like commitment to a relationship, commitment to a family, a commitment to like working through things.
Yeah. I would say,
Each other.
honesty, loyalty. She's the most loyal person I know, period. But also a sense of humor. Like we both, those that know Erin know that she's fun and likes to
Yes.
laugh and everything.
That's true. She's funny.
And I, over the years, I've kind of mellowed out. But I mean, like when her and I met, I would do anything for a laugh. I mean, it was all about trying to get a laugh
Yeah,
and
it
be
was-
funny. So that's just something that we both have at our core is we like to laugh. We like to have fun. And I think if one of us had it, one of us didn't. It might
Yeah,
not
we
work out.
can entertain each other just like a couple of idiots.
That's
But we like our
fabulous.
jokes.
That's fabulous. So what would you say to that question about picking the familiar, how we work out our family of origin, childhood patterns, feelings about relationship?
First of all, I want to respond to that, but I do want to also add that laughter is so important. And in fact, when one of our kids got married a couple of years ago, I just said, you've got to have a sense of humor. Just like your sense of humor is going to keep your relationship afloat. Laughter's healing.
Yeah.
And we laugh a lot too, usually. We have had a good history of laughter. We like to make each other laugh. But I can say, well, do you want to say something? Because I was going to actually speak for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Absolutely. As we grow older, we grow together. There's very little that differentiates Zoe from George these days.
That's true.
But I will say, I was attracted to Ellie, to Zoe with this idea that we have these values, and I think spiritual values. We see the world the same way with the same qualities, and when we get to the brink, we find that that's what really brings us back together, is this affinity. But also, I was very attracted to Zoe because she comes from a Mediterranean culture, which is full of warmth and expressiveness and generosity. I come from a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture, which is very reserved. We were not told to have, it was not okay to have our feelings, and you speak with in reserved tones. The Mediterraneans, unless you're throwing plates and yelling at each other, you're not communicating. So we had to get used to that. But that was very attractive to me because I was...
So it's an opposites attract?
That was an opposite attract piece
Plus
of what attracted us.
You were sort of you always, I would say that you come from a background where abandonment issues are huge for you. And so you felt, you've said, and so is our therapist, that it's been nice for you to feel like somebody's there for you, touching you and saying nice things to you.
Huh. Go ahead. Zoe.
Something that I'm not sure how this is relative to family patterns, but I know that in terms of complementary, I think there's a good example I can state for us is that I've learned a lot in this marriage as far as what I've learned, what George here has taught me is how to be a better partner. I tend to be really independent. I'm action oriented. I make up my mind to do something and then I just do it, and I've always just done it. He, on the other hand, has always been like, let's talk about this. This is my idea. What do you think? I've become a lot more like that over the years, where I just I'm not up and doing things. He's really helped me become a better partner. I was really good at playing you can play in your sandbox and I can play in my sandbox, and we can play at the same time. But I don't want to play in the same sandbox, you know? But now I can play in the same sandbox. And I like to imagine, I don't know, that I've helped George here become a little more, check in with himself. What does he want? What do what does he want to do instead of what is it that you want to do? Right.
Did you see the movie? It's old now. Fools Rush In. It's about a WASP guy who's played by the Friends actor. I can't think of his name. And he falls in love with a Latina, and she has this big extended family, and he has this really very emotionally reserved, small, distant.
Well, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
The first
Oh,
one.
that's
Yeah.
a good one.
Right,
That's a good one. So how do you keep sex, romance alive after decades? Because part of sex at first is it's new and exciting and exploratory, and you don't know what's going to happen next. It's thrilling. So how do you keep that buzzing after decades and decades?
Well, I think making it a priority. I feel like, I mean, not like the priority, but making sure it's on the list, because I feel, just watching over the years, like peers or, other couples with young kids, that it's just like, oh, well,
We're too tired.
I'm doing too much of this, and, I can't handle, like, giving of myself because I'm too spread thin. And I almost feel like, for me, I felt sensitive to, if I ever feel that way, then that I have to look at what I'm doing in
Your
other parts of my
priorities,
life. Yeah, I might need to change how I'm doing stuff, because if that is something that gets ignored, that's a disservice to both of us and to our kids. So
it's an important glue that holds people together.
So I think making sure, I mean, come on, just the basics are interesting enough. But making sure that you make time for that intimate time. So
I think that, when we were first together, sex is a difficult thing for most people to talk about. Some people can openly talk about it, but most of us just have our hang-ups, and it just is what it is. But early in the relationship, of course, we had our hang-ups, and, our sex life was very, utilitarian. It was, we had knife, fork, and spoon, and it worked. But I think it came out that we learned to communicate. We learned to say, I like this, I don't like that. So we would start to have those conversations, and then when we could eliminate the things that your partner doesn't like, we take the things we like and then just start expanding. And so, I guess to use the silverware thing, we went from knife, fork, and spoon. Now we've got a Swiss Army knife. And there's but there's literally there's no go-to thing. There's no we just and
you still need a fork.
You still need a knife, fork, and spoon. But But I think that, we continue to find things that are, that we, and it's not a quest for us. It's not, it's an intimate thing that we share together. But certainly as we stumble upon something, we go, hey, that worked, that was cool, and just add that. So I
But
think,
making
it
sure
come-
that it's something that we devote time to.
Yeah, but I think just the open communication is key to keep it interesting, keep it going.
Some of the couples that I interviewed said that after they had kids, they had to do things like fantasies, like I'm a Swedish exchange student, virgin guy, and the Swedish daughter comes in the room one night. Woo!
Role
What
play.
happened? Role play, or this. So that kind of thing keeps it exciting because you're having sex with a Swedish.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. However, there's different ways to go about it,
Yeah.
Like sometimes when it gets summertime, I like those like trashy historical romance novels sometimes. I think each person has to invest individually in themselves too. Like invest in just, feeling good and, feeling their own sense of sensuality, and then you bring it together. So.
They have books with all kinds of new things, experiments to do. What about you two? How do you keep romance, sex fresh after decades and decades and decades?
So many decades.
Why you gotta say it like that?
Decades and decades. I think, it's really interesting to watch the romance thing transform through time. It really does transform. You're dealing with different qualities. But I think the one part of what we're talking about is the intimacy. And there's a lot of ways to explore intimacy that includes sexuality, but a lot of other things too. I mean, to this day, I still find myself ultimately attracted to Zoe. I find her very attractive and very interesting, and that plays out in a lot of different ways. So it's hard to just sort of compartmentalize it to sexuality. Intimacy has expanded, and we share intimate space all the time in many different ways. So I say that.
But I do also want to add that I think having that sexual component is really important, and I think it's like whether you're a young couple with little kids or an older couple with different interests and waning, things physically change. They simply do for all of us, and but I think it's really important to make time. I have friends actually that have like dates, like every Sunday at 11 o'clock or
It's a
whatever.
sex date.
It's their sex date. It's and whatever works. But I think it's really important because unless we make time for it, if we don't use it, we lose it. And I really believe that. And then all of a sudden it becomes sort of like a memory, and it's not okay. I think it's like I think it's really important because it is a glue. It is. I think sexuality is nothing to be taken lightly. Maybe some of us did once upon a time. Maybe I know I did. I had no comprehension of how important it is and how it binds you. It's really important to keep alive, I think, in a marriage.
Yeah. And the studies show that people in their 70s and 80s, I think they have sex as much as people in their 20s. Maybe because they're
Maybe
married.
not
they're
quite
married.
as in their 20s. I mean, I remember having sex all day long.
It's a stamina issue.
Yeah, but I know, I agree. Yeah.
So, do you think that it helps to go away, to be on a trip or to be out of the house or in the park or a telephone booth or something where you're not in a routine?
I like to think that, and I've given a lot of thought, and I've given it a lot of practice by going to a lot of different places. I don't think that matters so much. I really believe that the biggest sex organ is in our brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you are. Because, going places, the geographic just doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, certain substances contributed to whatever the experience was, but you take those away, then you have to use your own chemicals in your brain,
Right.
and that works just as well.
Right. Good point. George, were you going to say
But,
something?
yeah, I was going to say, I think what I heard you suggesting is that maybe by some limited absence, you actually increase the appetite for sex.
Oh,
And my hit on it is actually what increases, at least my appetite for sex with Zoe, is spending time with her. spending nice
Yeah.
time with her, not routine time, but just if we're on vacation and we're actually spending days together, eating meals and walking and relaxing, that is the kind of thing that ultimately gives rise to sexual interest.
Right. What I was thinking of, this couple said that they needed to leave the house because the house is, did you do the dishes? Did you pay the bill? Oh my gosh, the kid didn't do their homework. But if you leave, then it's easier not to be distracted and just be,
I think
focus.
flirting with each other is a big thing too. You know, I mean, I think that's part of the intimacy, and that makes whatever space you occupy the right space to be in for
so you can flirt
for
doing the dishes
intimacy.
together. or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely yell at the kids, flirt a little.
There's a lot of butt slapping. I don't know if I can say the other word, but both ways. You know, it doesn't matter who's doing dishes or whatever. There's always a swat in the butt or something. You know, if the kids are around, they just laugh. I mean, it's just, you know. But there's that general kind of flirting, playing around. But get back to what you're saying. Yeah, I don't. We're fine in the house. We don't have to go out somewhere.
Yeah, right.
It's partly because you don't have little kids.
Yeah, yes, there is a
Yeah,
big difference.
Yeah, trying to go back into my memory. Yeah, it's been a while.
Ask Dr. Gale is made possible by the generous contributions of KCFR supporters and by Chico Sports Ltd., a locally owned sporting goods store featuring bicycles, sports equipment, and apparel for all seasons since 1985. Sports Ltd. is located in the Safeway Plaza on Mangrove Avenue and is grateful for the support of local businesses and the community. Ask Dr. Gale is brought to you by KIXE Channel 9, presenting Ken Burns' 10-part documentary, The Vietnam War. This consequential, divisive, and controversial event in American history has never before been told. The Vietnam War airs for 2 weeks starting on Sunday, September 17th at 8 p.m. KIXE will be hosting a pre-screening in Chico on Thursday, September 14th at 5:30 p.m. at the Villain Smith Museum for Anthropology. For details on attending the pre-screening, visit KIXE on Facebook or call 243-5493. So I want to remind you, you're listening to FM 91, KZFR Chico, listener-supported community radio for the Sacramento Valley and the foothills. And the opinions expressed on the show don't necessarily represent those of the station or the people who support it. And I want to mention to listeners that next month, the Ask Dr. Gale is on the second Thursday of each month, we're going to have a men's panel of involved fathers. So I'm kind of on a little family kick right now. So these are men who spend a lot of time with their kids. And if any listeners are one of those men, you should contact me at, my email is gkimball@csuchico.edu. So next question, 10 years from now, where would you like to be in your marriage? Any goals, any things you want to make happen, or if you look ahead, where are you headed? Whoever wants to take that.
Well, I think traveling together, being able to really spend time together, adventuring and continuing to enjoy our kids, hopefully grandkids,
Hopefully.
and continue to. His side of the family is very family oriented, which I found very attractive since I didn't really have that aspect, and so I think continuing to inspire that in our kids and as they grow in their relationships.
10 years from now?
10 years from now, well, hope I'm alive and healthy. I have just more quality time together. Really look forward to reprioritizing. It's always, right now it's been just a matter of how much time, how much money, and looking at retirement, especially for George. And I'm self-employed, so I can sort of maneuver my life. But yeah, having more time together to do things that we love doing and just do more of that. And enjoy our family, good doses of them. Yeah.
What a lot of times people who one of the partners divorce is retired, they don't know what to do with each other. They're not used to having that much time together. How do you work on that?
Well, we've had the opportunity a couple of different times to actually spend a couple years doing things that we were together all the time, like when we were living, doing rehab on that for a couple of years. So we've had chunks where we've been together a lot, and for the most part, it works out really well. I think it's been good. I know I always have way more things to do than time to do. I'm still pretty independent despite the lessons, despite all this influence of trying to be a good partner. We seem to, this person has a lot of interests.
So it's
aside
not
of
going to be
me.
a problem.
Don't you?
Oh, of course. But I think, but to answer the question, I mean, where do I see ourselves
Yeah.
being in 10 years? I mean, we're on a path right now. I don't know where this path is going, and we never have known where our path is going. If I can find myself on this path with you 10 years from now, that will be a very happy outcome. So, without any preconception, I see myself with you. I don't know what that means.
Oh.
Well, isn't that sweet? I see myself with you too, except I see us spending a lot more time together because I don't see you enough. Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow
No.
fonder. No.
No cliches.
No, actually, absence for me makes it so it's just super easy for me to just take off and be on my own. Not a good recipe for partnership for me.
So with couples, especially in step families, but in all marriages, child rearing can be a real source of conflict. Like one parent is stricter, the other thinks, oh, you're too strict. So I wondered, especially with 4 kids, how have you worked out child discipline? What worked and what worked in terms of if you had different approaches?
Well, I think, that definitely, like, trying not to, like, if you disagree on parenting, like, not showing that to the kids. Showing a united front even if you disagree on how to deal with something. I feel like a lot of times we're able to get the kids to sort of align against us, which...
Because we were united, though.
I mean, you said
Yeah.
you have a curfew and they said no, or what's an example of aligning?
We've actually caught in disciplining our kids. I think so. So your question was, do we have differences? We actually we're alike. There's been a few little disagreements but it's always little things, like those shoes are too expensive, but not like the stuff that's really important. We see eye to eye. But the funny thing that she's talking about is we have caught our children. They don't know where we can hear their conversation, and we see them. They're mad at us. We've laid down the law, and they're mad at us. We hear them conspiring on how to like get around this situation, whatever. And instead of busting them, we go, you know what? They're working together. She was an only child. I had a brother, and my brother was 3.5 years older, and he was pretty mean to me. It was, pretty abusive, typical. I shouldn't say typical. He was a very abusive older brother. So we've always worked really hard with the kids that we want them. We always tell them nobody is going to be as close to you. The friends you have now, all that. Nobody's going to be as close as your siblings. You guys have to realize that. You guys have to work together. You have to, you're going to spend the rest of your lives together. You have to be a unit. So in those moments when we've kind of caught them conspiring, we just sneak away together, kind of laugh it off. And we just go,
Their
at
relationships
least
are really important
they're
to
working
me.
together.
Yeah.
But thankfully we haven't had any serious issues with, we seem to be on the same page when it comes
What
to
did you
discipline.
use for consequences if someone disobeyed or broke the rules or?
Take away privileges, take away...
Timeout chairs.
Yeah. Oh, when they were little.
Bought little wooden chairs, put them in so they had to sit and stare at the corner.
It's really embarrassing when you're 16 and have to sit in that little chair.
But it works. It's great discipline.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. No,
I think it's just you lose a privilege or but for the most part, boy, I'm sure glad none of our kids were like me. We've been
I
really
would say one thing that I learned
Kinda
from
lucked out
my
on that.
parents' parenting was find what your kid loves, and then that's what you can take away. And so for me, I always went to my friends. I always loved hanging out with my friends. So that was they even said,
consequence.
back in the day, they said they could spank my bottom, they could do whatever they wanted. nothing meant as much as if they said, okay, you can't see your friends for 2 weeks or whatever. So we kind of learned from that lesson. And so in today's day and age, it's you can't use your computer unless it's for school. We never had to take away their cell phone, but limiting their video games, especially for the boys and stuff. So find things that they really enjoy, and then that's let them know ahead of time, if this happens, this is the consequence.
Yeah, I think it's Dreiker's Children the Challenge, where he says talking doesn't work, monologuing, blah, 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 you don't hear, it's got to be consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what did you two use for consequences?
Well,
Or do-
I wanted to just speak to, we had one child who was very difficult.
Yeah,
and
all three were different.
all three were different, but one child very difficult, and we ended up finding ourselves over the course of several years walking down a path where every single privilege the child had was taken away. We had nothing left to take away.
Including the things he loved, which broke my heart. He was such a great skier, and he wanted to be a racer, and he could have been a racer. We said, all you got to do is keep a C average. C. But no. Wanted to ski and get D's. It's like, you can't do that.
No.
Really hard stuff.
So my point is that it was very difficult. We got to the end of the rope and had no other recourse. And so what ended up happening in hindsight is that you have to learn how to live with a tremendous amount of ambiguity. Situations aren't just black and white. They don't play out the way you want them to. You don't have control. And sometimes you have to just live with a really ugly situation for years. And ultimately, our difficult child left home, and they're in the world doing their thing on their terms, and that's fine. But it was probably a 10-year slog of really, really awkward, unfortunate work. So it precipitated a lot of work for us.
Yes.
And that was really good in the long run for our relationship.
But as far as consequences, it's the same thing, kind of taking away privileges, whatever those may be. Yeah. I mean, and it actually, the two of the kids, they were pretty easy.
The
I mean,
girls.
yeah, the girls. We just said, like, there weren't too many times, but the consequences didn't have to be that tremendous, really. I mean, so we had to pick them up in jail each time. One of them at least once, for getting drunk when they were 16. Okay, so they lost, but they felt so bad that we didn't really even have to do anything,
Did you find that too, that the girls were easier or not?
Well, when all the kids were younger, I felt like with girls, you can use a lot more verbiage with them. You can talk things out. Boys, you get 5 words. You better make them good.
That's a good point.
5 words per incident.
That's a good point.
And like I've even had one of my sons, my older son, look at me and say, "You know what? I tuned you out like
3 paragraphs.
3 sentences ago." So that, if you like to kind of discuss things with your child, girls, it was easier to do that. Boys, nope. At least for my boys.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty.
Yeah, I think
Pretty general.
our interaction with the male side generally characterized teenage male vocabulary as monosyllabic.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
You get one-word responses, and often they were grunts.
Yeah.
And translated.
Barely audible.
As you listen to a phone message left by a friend, it's like, hi,
That's where what is that kind of music called? That is There's a name for that.
Oh gosh.
A beatbox or
Beatbox. Yeah.
I guess beatbox.
Must be a teen adolescent
practicing
boy
a
thing.
beatbox.
Real quick, couple words, how would you summarize what makes a marriage work over time? Aaron.
Communication,
Dedication.
friendship. I think that.
I think dedication too. I think you have to. It's.
Because they're going to be hard times.
Yeah, because that is one of the things I did tell our daughter when she was getting married. Is it's work. It is work. It's not if I don't think I went into this much detail. I'm a guy. I used 5 words, but it's work, and there's going to be tough times. It's not going to always be easy, but it's worth it. If you're with the right person, it's worth it to stick it out.
Good.
I think, playing together, laughing together, communicating, and being willing to do the work. No matter how many years you are together, being willing and to do things that you like, so you bring out the good in each other and you enjoy each other. And one more thing, have common goals. No matter where we're at in our life that we don't say, well, I'm done now. we're done when we're dead. We have to keep doing things and working towards common goals, I think.
George?
Very quickly, commitment, respect, and application of two measuring sticks. The first is ensure that you're treating each other better than each of you deserves. You have to be able to answer
like
yes, both of you. Is the other person treating you better than you deserve? Both of you answer yes, good sign. Are you getting what you need at least 6 times out of 10? At least 6 times,
That's
not 10
interesting.
times or 8 times, but if you're getting 6 out of 10,
reasonable.
it's workable.
Yeah.
And if each of you,
Yeah.
so it's got to be reciprocal.
Pretty good
That's a good
measures,
point,
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Those.
George and
Ouch.
Zoe, Aaron and Richard, thank you very much. Very interesting. I think this is going to help people who are not married, or maybe who are married and struggling. So you're listening to KCFR Radio. Stay tuned for Peanut Butter and Jelly with Sandra. And take it away, Sandra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun. Gail, it would be interesting to do a show, oops,
No, it's okay.
with people who are single and who don't want to be single.
What do we